I have measured the reaction times of top F1 YouTubers without them knowing. So for this video then, we're going to be analysing the exact reaction time from lights out to the car starting moving of top F1 YouTubers. Lots of names that you guys will already know. And the requirements are that they need to have over 100,000 subscribers. They also need to have at least 3 dry starts up on YouTube. And they also just need to appear in that search list somewhere. The reason I've done it for that way is because there will never be people that I've missed. There will never be people that are saying, why haven't you included my favourite YouTuber? Why haven't you included this much bigger YouTuber? They also need to be predominantly a racing YouTuber. Look, just get on with it. In the comments, just put the hate for the people I've missed. But this is the people that I've included there. I've included Arav, Into the Barrier, Jarno Opmeer, Jimmy Broadbent, Super GT, Team Marduk, and me. Okay, alright, I know I haven't got 100,000 subscribers, but it's my video. I get to be in my own videos. So, yes, as I said, just let the hate roll in the comments. Let me know I've been an idiot because I've missed such and such. But I put those conditions on it, particularly on the search conditions, just because I knew that there'd be people I missed. So if you're not in the top, I don't know what it was, 50 search results or so on YouTube, you haven't got over 100,000 subscribers. That is why you weren't included. But anyway then, so how are these tests going to work? So I'm going to measure in frames per second the time it takes between the lights going out, all in the official F1 game of course, to the car starting moving. And starting moving, by that I mean it needs to register a speed on the speedometer. Now obviously this is not a perfect test, it's not an absolute reaction test, but I wanted it to be a sneaky test. I wanted to kind of compare everything without them even knowing, so this is the way we're going to do it. But actually it's fairly accurate. The biggest thing that's going to matter would be if they're not using, if they've got the video sped up or slowed down, which I don't think any of them have. But more importantly, their home setup, obviously. So if someone's got a really laggy TV or a really laggy controller or something, obviously that's going to make a difference. I can't do anything about that. But I think for the most part it's quite a fair test. I measured it against my raw recording of some gameplay that I did, compared to the content that I put out on YouTube. So YouTube re-renders the video, and it was exactly the same. The result was exactly the same. So I actually think this is quite a good way of measuring it. It does actually give us some interesting results. So I'm measuring it at 60 frames per second. Each frame is 16.6 thousandths of a second, and there's 20 frames is equal to 0.33 of a second, 3.3 tenths of a second, just for reference. So let's get into it then. We're going to do slowest to fastest, so the best reaction times will be at the end of the video, starting off with Into the Barrier. Unfortunately, Into the Barrier, you get the wooden spoon from me. So he actually recorded at 30 FPS, re-uploads at 30 FPS, which potentially contributes to his time, but actually doesn't contribute to the measurements because I still measured it in 60 FPS. And what happens is each frame just repeated twice in a row, so it doesn't actually affect the measurement at all. But I got all 3 of these recordings from a online lobbies video he did, very typical Into the Barrier content. And the first race he did, it took him 31 frames to react to the lights. The second race he did, it also took him 31 frames to react to the lights. And the third race he did, it took him 35 frames to react to the lights. So that gives an average of 32.33 frames, or obviously just over half a second, 0.53 seconds. So he was the slowest. He is on Xbox, I think he records on Xbox, possibly still using a TV, maybe that contributes to all of that, but obviously also not known for his speed, he's known for his comedy, so maybe that explains a bit of that. But anyway, up next then, we have got Super GT. Super GT was actually the slowest, the second slowest, I should say, reaction times, which did surprise me slightly since he does, a lot of sim racing and real life karting and that sort of thing. I thought he'd have quite good reaction times, but again, setups can come into it. But I got all 3 of his measurements from basically a multiplayer diss video that he did, just sort of saying the state of F1 multiplayer wasn't very good, which I've done a similar video as well. So in race 1 of that, he got 25 frames reaction time. In race 2 of that, he got 24 frames reaction time. And in race 3, he got 25 frames reaction time. So quite consistent there, if nothing else. So that gives an average of 24.33 frames across those 3, which is about 0.4 seconds reaction time from lights out to the car starting to move. So just over a tenth of a second or so quicker than Scott Into the Barrier. So the next up then is Team Marduk. Team Marduk, my 2-player career teammate, of course. I took 3 measurements from his channel. The first of which was actually from our most recent race that we did in 2-player career, so he's really trying to get a good start because he's up against me. He took 25 frames to react to that one. I also took 2 measurements from his My Team career mode. So the first one was from episode 11, which it took him 20 frames to react to the lights. And then I took one from his episode 26 of his My Team career mode, which took him 22 frames to react to that one. So that gives an average of 22.33 frames, which is 0.37 seconds. So just over 3.5 tenths of a second. So only 300ths of a second quicker than Super GT. So pretty damn similar, which isn't going to make a great difference really, but a very slightly quicker reaction time there for Team at Marduk. Next up then, and slightly quicker than Team at Marduk, is Arava. It's Arav. Of course, you know, this is the second biggest F1 full-time F1 content creator. And I took 3 measurements from his channel. All 3 were from My Team career mode, because that is, of course, his main content that he uploads. So I took a measurement from episode 35, which was 20 frames per second. I took a measurement from episode 36 of My Team career mode, which was 21 frames per second. And I took a measurement from episode 38 of his My Team career mode, which was 25 frames per second. So fairly consistent, that last one being the slowest. That gives an average of 22 frames reaction time from lights out to car moving, which is 0.36 seconds, so 3.6 tenths of a second, just 100th of a second quicker than Ben Team at Marduk. So not much at all, but very slight advantage for Arav there. And coming in with absolutely identical average is Jimmy Broadbent. So Jimmy Broadbent then, he actually uses cockpit cam, I will say that. So I've had to use the kind of 3D modelled lights rather than the 2D model that are on your screen. I've also had to use the speed that comes up on the wheel, but both of which are absolutely identical. There's no further lag between those two, so there's no worries about that. As I said, he has actually got an absolute identical average, but I took all 3 of his measurements from, he did a 5-lap career mode stream, where he did 5-lap races to do a My Team career mode. So in race 2 of that, he got 22 frames measurement. In race 3 of that, he got 23 frames measurement. And in race 4 of that, he got 21 frames measurement from lights out to car starting moving, giving him an average, as I said, exactly the same of Arav of 22 frames. The reason I put him ahead of Arav is because Arav had a slower, worse time. So that was the only way I could really separate them. So again, 0.36 of a second for Jimmy Broadbent. Next up then, in second place, it's me. I managed to get second place out of these guys, which was quite a surprise. Didn't expect it to be quite that high. But again, very, very similar times here, really. I took all 3 of my measurements from 2-player career mode, because that's the time when I'm really trying to sweat and get a good start. So I did episode 9, 10, and 11. From each of those, from episode 9, I got 22 frames. From episode 10, I got 23 frames. And then what really helped me was in episode 11, I had a really nice start. I got 18 frames from lights out to car moving. That gives an average of 21 frames, just 1 frame quicker than Jimmy and Arav. And again, that just gives an reaction time of 0.35, so 3.5 tenths of a second from lights out to car moving. So all those last from second place to second last place, all very, very similar times, just 3 frames of a second, just 500ths of a second, half a tenth of a second difference between all of those. So very, very little. But in first place, unsurprisingly, we've got Jarno Opmeer, the reigning F1 esports world champion. Not a surprise to see him out top. What did surprise me was the margin. So I've taken his measurements. The first one was from My Team career mode that he's got on his channel, episode 36. He got 19 frames per second. So that one is very slightly slower than my best start, which was the previous best single race start. But his next 2 starts are better than both of those. He's the first video around Russia. He got 17 frames per second for that one. And he did a PSGL league race as well around China. And he got 17 seconds for that one as well. 17 frames, sorry, I should say, for that one. So very, very consistent stuff. 17, 17, and 19. You know, other than my one race, all 3 of those times were better than everybody else. So real consistent stuff. That gives an average reaction time of 17.66 frames, or 0.29 frames. 0.29 seconds. So just under 3/10 of a second. So over half a tenth quicker than all the other content creators in this list. So unsurprisingly, esports guys wins. But actually, that surprised me with the margin. That was actually quite a big margin. A half a tenth is a fair chunk of time, really. I mean, you know, these guys, the esports guys, will be happy to find half a tenth of time overall per lap. So to find half a tenth on the start is a pretty big chunk of time. And I put that down to obviously training. I'm sure he does reaction training stuff, of course, signed with Mercedes these days. So I'm sure he's actually trains himself to react that well. But also his setup and his equipment. You know, he runs lowish graphic settings and things like that to make sure that the game responds as quick as possible. I'm sure he's got a very high refresh rate monitor as well, very low response time monitor. I'm sure his controls also set up to be as low response time as possible, because all that that stuff really matters when you're looking for those thousandths and hundredths of a second that it takes to be a top league and esports driver. So there we go then, guys. That was the reaction times from the top F1 YouTubers in the YouTube scene. Hopefully you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to subscribe if you like this sort of content. I'm always putting out kind of relatively unique and analytical content, so do subscribe if you enjoyed it. And congrats to Jan Watmir on his best reaction time. Not surprisingly though, but I thank you for watching, guys. Catch you next time. Bye bye.